All right, gang, welcome back to another No Comic Book Day here at the Script Heroes podcast. He hates the joke every time I make it, so I can never stop. We are here today to talk about Hellboy, the Crooked Man. But Script Heroes, you already talked about Hellboy, the Crooked Man. That's right, we talked about the comic a month ago now when the movie was releasing across the pond in the UK, but it has since come here to the United States. And we are now prepared to talk about the movie itself with the comic kind of in the back of our mind as we look at it, both as a movie, as an adaptation of the comic, and as just like a general kind of comic book movie. Yep. Lots of fun stuff to consider there. So just as a brief kind of intro into the movie, we've got the director, Brian Taylor, the writers, Christopher Golden, Mike Mignola, and Brian Taylor, the director. The book is written by Mike Mignola with art by Richard Corbin. And the movie stars Jack Casey as Hellboy himself, Jefferson White as our beloved Tom, and Adeline Rudolph as, not in the comics, so there's our kind of intro into the differences, as Bobbie Jo, a BPRD officer.
Yes.
So to kind of, bite the nail on the head that's not the correct phrase at all.
I don't think that's a phrase.
No, and it doesn't even fit thematically for what I was going. I guess the elephant in the room. In the original comic, Hellboy is kind of in the wandering hero way of things, and just kind of stumbles upon what's happening here in the Appalachian Mountains, where this witch has placed a curse upon someone. And then he goes in his adventure from there, really more as almost as a side character to Tom, who really takes center stage. That is very much less the case here in the movie, because it's a Hellboy movie. They're going to want Hellboy to be, the lead. So it opens with a train sequence where Hellboy...
Train ride from hell.
Yes. Where Hellboy, Bobbie Jo, and some random FBI agent, I think, are on a train with
not around for
cargo.
long if you can't tell from Katie's.
Yes.
Little memory.
Though notoriously, Script Hero is terrible at names, so could be.
I wrote a bunch of them in my notes, so that not his though, because he was pretty unimportant.
He was very unimportant, because in this first scene, we have them transporting the cargo, which is this, cursed spider.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an evil spider that is then roided out by the evil of the forest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. It gets bigger as they fight, and as it gets bigger and they fight in this train car, they knock the train car from the train, sending it careening down the hill. It eats the FBI agent's face.
Yeah, not to derail us immediately, but it's me, so I have to derail us immediately.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, the best action sequence of the film.
It was so
right
fun.
At the beginning there. So, yeah, interesting. And I'll talk more about the action later, and I'm going to try not to sound like too much of a film geek throughout this.
I suppose important context, Jay has a degree in film. His big background is comics and film, or creative writing and film.
Because there's certainly a lot in this film to talk about, but I thought I was real jazzed after that whole opening sequence. I thought it was really, really cool. I thought that the way it was shot was real nice, and then kind of the derailment coming when Hellboy throws the spider against the wall was just a really nice transition into this new location. So I thought,
and there was a really
I thought the opening of this film was just top notch.
Right, I thought it was phenomenal. It was so good right out the gates. And I think one of the reasons that it worked so well was because of the biting tension of it, because you see as Hellboy and the spider are fighting, the train start to rock a bit. And so you get that sense of oh, he's gonna go, and then it very satisfyingly does. But yeah, I
think as one of the fully original sequences, and spoiler alert, the only fully original sequence in which Bobbie and Hellboy are together for.
That is true.
Yeah. I think this is where Bobbie felt the most natural in the story. I think there's other places where they kind of try to continue Bobbie's plot thread, which but it's basically her like delving into witchcraft and trying to learn about witchcraft and spells and that kind of stuff. I thought a lot of that, because they would basically grab things straight from the comic and then just like insert her a bit in, felt very off to me.
Yeah.
This was where she felt really nice. It was you know, her asking Hellboy questions, good setup, and then like her fear really built the fear here to where she literally like gets behind Hellboy for this fight, and it's a very nice sequence.
Yeah, so, I'm excited to talk more deeply about Bobbie, because it's obviously one of she's not in the comic, a wholly original character for this movie. I guess I didn't look it up. Is she a regular in the BPRD? Do you know?
I don't think so. I believe she's a fully original character. I didn't look too much in it, but from what I saw, the fact that they were advertising her as like just new BRPD agent, like that kind of stuff, it came off to me as her being an original character, especially because are we going through the plot like fully here? I don't know what we're doing, so I don't want to. I was
gonna hit the kind of broad strokes.
Yeah, you hit the broad. I didn't want to because I was gonna jump ahead. So I'm glad I'm just asking. So I'll shut up and let you.
Okay, she is an original character.
Okay, that was the vibe I got.
Me too, yeah. Like, she felt very crafted for this plot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they end up in Appalachia, out in the mountains, and we get the much more familiar beats of Hellboy the Crooked Man. We see the guy who's been afflicted by the witch Cora. We see the entrance of Tom. Witch balls, man. Which the entrance of Tom is one of those instances where it felt like medium mattered. Like, his entrance was so effective in the comic, and it felt very like in tone. It's weird in, I think, live action to see things that are a little like too convenient and stuff like that, because it doesn't feel as forgiving. So his
I'm biting my tongue because I don't want to get to my like big criticisms yet, so I'm gonna keep biting my tongue here.
Okay.
You keep going.
But we follow Tom. There's, I think, a good interaction between Hellboy and Bobbie there, where Bobbie is very much like, no, there's like witchcraft happening here, we need to investigate that, and Hellboy is very much like, you are a research monkey, you cannot investigate things. Which I think was a good dynamic between them. You're biting your tongue about Tom, I suppose. I am very much biting my tongue about Bobbie and Hellboy's weird relationship.
That was the thing I didn't want to spoil from later. That was the thing that I was going to throw out in that beginning sequence where I was like, her thing. Yeah, let's talk about it. That non-existent love story that they try to like throw in at the end. Real fucking weird.
Let me give some context for our dear listeners. So Hellboy and Bobbie are traveling together here. We don't get a lot of their backstory together.
No.
As in, I don't think we get any of it.
No, get nothing.
Later on, we do meet the blind reverend from the comic, and at one point he's interacting with Bobbie, and she's like, Hellboy knows everything. And the Reverend is like, there's one thing he doesn't know.
I believe it was Hellboy isn't scared of anything. And there's one thing he's scared of. He's scared to tell you how he really feels. Out of left field! There was nothing there, man! And like, I was shocked.
And there's a scene, so in, they add in this like rest scene after Cora gets reinflated, which I'll jump to in a second. And Hellboy has like an almost paternal moment with Bobbie where it's like, oh, is that what their relationship is supposed to be? Where he like kind of like tucks her in and reassures her. And
I didn't get like anything. Like, it's just like, I didn't get any indication of like any ultra significant like it felt very much like okay, this is his partner right now, so they kind of know each other. Cool. Like, that's solid. Like, they get each other a little bit. Like, that was the vibe. Like, there was no romance brewing throughout this film.
And especially, like, I think that it could be a very subtle thing at the very end if you were like, and then she, like, leans on his shoulder and it's like, oh, because of the journey they've been on here, these, like, feelings have started to form or something. But the implication of Hellboy feels this, has been feeling this, and is like scared to admit that he's feeling this was so bonkers.
Oh yeah, no, that was that was one of the things I was biting my tongue off, because I was like, I don't know if we want to talk about that yet, but that was like that's the kind of thing, like I don't want to speak to things because I don't have any information on the production of this film, which is rare for me because I usually love looking at the behind the scenes shit. But like it feels like something that happens when they decide to do like reshoots last minute because they were like, maybe this needs a love story, so let's just reshoot this one little scene with the priest and her that they can easily reshoot to change those lines, and then we'll reshoot the ending so that she can like lean her head, because like it feels like just like, okay, we'll just tweak these two things slightly and then we can have that.
What gets me is I feel like if they had done more groundwork for it or something, I wouldn't have been like totally opposed to it. I wouldn't find it.
Well, that's why I think it's reshoots. There's just no groundwork. There's nothing outside of those two scenes.
But it bothers me because I really liked the payoff of the Reverend telling her, like, I think that it is something to the effect of like Hellboy doesn't know everything, because then
it was fear. It was definitely fear. He said he's scared to tell you how he was.
In the scene when they're going up to the phone, she makes a like really cute comment about it, and I'm like, oh, I liked that for her. Like that kind of like
it's scared. She says like, you're scared of one thing.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. I don't know why I remember that line very clearly, because it like jumped out to me so much. But yeah, it was he's scared of one thing, like he's scared to tell you how he really feels.
I was like, that was such a good payoff for such a bad romance.
It was just real weird. Let's not get too sidetracked on that, because it was relative. Despite it being the ending, it was very minor in the whole film because it was those two scenes.
Yeah, because it was reshoots.
I mean that's the assumption, right? Like that's got to be the guess.
I suppose it doesn't feel like it was, and like I feel like Hellboy isn't normally a romantic boy.
No, there were a few like well again I'm gonna try to let you hit on all the things before I get into my kind of big picture stuff.
Let's keep this show on the road, this train on the tracks. Oh, by the way, they lost the spider because it got small again and escaped.
Yeah, went into the mine shafts that end up being important to the
so they team up with Tom. And they head out, they find Cora's house. I was so excited. We had her deflated body. I was so thrilled. I was really curious about how they were going to do that. And they did have, like, just a flat thing. And it was very gross looking. And I was like, I appreciate that. That was a good one.
It was different, but it was definitely still uncomfortable.
Yes.
They did it in a different way, but it was cool. I did like that.
In a way that I think worked
something
really
that works better for the film. I like when they first had them go in there, like they had Hellboy like pick up one of the arms, like that was a nice little like a thing for the medium to do. So yeah, that was
exactly
that was nice.
That's what I definitely agree. It was the right move for the medium change. Just like in the comic, Cora comes back in the form of raccoon.
Notably, they had to wait though this time instead of her like coming in as they discovered. We get a scene with them.
Well, I believe they had to wait last time too, because then they have a discussion.
Do they? I guess maybe. I think Hellboy. I didn't read the comic for this, so I'm going fully off of like what I thought I remembered. So you could absolutely be right.
But I think that Hellboy gives some like Hellboy backstory.
That's fair. Did they wait like in the room? I think though, like maybe like looking. I don't remember.
It was a much bigger space in the movie than it was in the room, or in the comic.
In the comic,
Cora returns in the form of this raccoon, which does crawl into her mouth. Just like in the comic, we don't see the like horror of it crawling in, but we see its tail go in, and then we have this disgusting sequence of like reinflation as the raccoon is like moving under her skin and filling her out. And I would love to know how they did that, because it felt like a practical effect to me.
Yeah, I think that was practical. It looked like they had something moving in like a rubber suit,
or like
because the body definitely
into like a latex
like kind
suit.
of the body looked like some sort of rubber latex suit that was on the bed. One of the really nicer effects in the film.
Like we were talking about what we were hoping they would blow the budget on, and I think that this was a good place to put a good chunk of budget. But we'll get to the other one later, because I think we'll both have qualms. But
I have plenty of things to complain about, so I'm happy to talk up the nice things here.
Yes. Oh yeah.
There's certainly things to talk about.
Yeah, just like in the comic, Cora returns and they have like a pretty civil discussion as Tom like comforts her. We get more backstory on her and Tom in this one than we did in the comic, which I thought was a little weird to add, but not like obtrusive or anything.
Had to pad out that runtime.
Exactly. They did. Here's the thing: it got to just over 90 minutes.
Dude, we get to the church at like minute 40. And
That's
I was like,
literally, it's at minute 45.
yeah, I was like, what the hell? I was like, how are we? What is happening? And
Yeah,
the
we'll
answer
get to
is
that
that
major
yeah,
change.
we don't finish there, and we get
Yeah.
we go to the mansion in the comic too, but we get a whole
Yeah,
extra.
but
Like,
we have an
section
actual like
to
sequence
yeah,
in,
yeah.
and by sequence I mean like 25 full minutes.
Yeah. And because we get all the Bobbie stuff there, they split that into two, so they can
Exactly,
really
yeah. But
pad it out.
we'll jump to that. We'll give you the full context. So Cora comes back, and then Effie arrives. Classic, like in the comic, she has some sort of power over Cora and is like tormenting her, which I think they hammed up in the movie, which I think was a good choice.
Yeah, honestly, my favorite I think casting in the film was Effie.
Effie?
Like I thought Effie
I
Effie
really
ate that
liked
role.
Cora's casting, actually.
I
think
thought
that
Cora
she
was solid
looked
too.
spooky as shit.
I thought Cora was definitely solid too. Cora is, at least in a percentage sense, I think in the movie even less than the book. Like she is
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, like real fastly taken out, and I mean, if you want to get like that was something that was that did not quite get preserved from the comic,
Yes, yeah.
compared to the inflated body of Cora.
But yeah, I think that she did a really great job. She reminded me a lot of Nell from The Haunting of Hill House, her actress, in a very positive way. But yeah, so they have this whole thing. Naturally, Effie marches out the horse, the iconic horse that is Tom's dad. They have their little kerfuffle. We do get the Effie line telling Hellboy that the Crooked Man isn't afraid of him at all, which is, I think, a good holdover as well. Like having that tone there. I think that it plays a little worse than it did in the comic, though, because Hellboy is so much more central here. Yeah. Like, in the comic, it really felt like the Crooked Man was after Tom, and Hellboy really gets to be... And again, it's his movie. Yeah. Okay. But he very much gets to take some of the Crooked Man's. Yeah.
I mean, I think the movie does a good... And I think a lot of it's just, like, recontextual, but the movie does a good job of hitting all the major beats and scenes of the comic. Like, this is a true adaptation of the story, and not just like an adaptation of the general vibes and characters like most, like comic adaptations are. So, plus
big points for that. And I think having Mike Mignola there as a writer, is probably very instrumental.
I mean, I think it's evident to see why Mike Mignola loves this one so much, because he got to actually take his story so directly into the film. So yeah.
But speaking of taking the story very directly, they then didn't, because it was a bad segue, because I have like the one more thing. They do take the bridle off, the dad becomes the dad, they camp out and have that weird paternal moment with Hellboy and Bobbie, and then they're off on the road. And out on the road, if in the comic, this is where they like pass by the coal mines where the ancient Native American witches are, and like that's when they change from day to night, and Cora like explodes into insects. And they very much they probably budget reasons, but they very much had to approach this scene.
It wasn't great, and it's one of those scenes that I think I'll throw out one of my big criticisms here, because this scene, it's so evident in when Cora's getting like done by the snake. I thought the cinematography was garbage. Like, there's a lot of just shaky cam cut, showing the same sequence again and again, just to like try to give that like sense of action, but there's like no rhyme or reason to it. Like the snake like crawls out and then goes back in and then around, and it's just like back and forth, all jostly. And a lot of
like every angle is a Dutch angle.
And outside of that initial action sequence in the train, basically every action sequence is like that, and it's just headache inducing instead of being cool or exciting. And
I'm here for that as well. Yeah, that was
huge downside.
Very spot on. While we're talking about the like technical filmmaking, I wanted to ask you, what was your take on the way they would cut between
scenes?
Yeah,
there were no match cuts, no match on actions. Like, everything was just a straight cut. There was no...
It was just a straight cut, and then they would use these like long black cuts
Oh yeah, they did those too with the like they would have the like title
when
thing.
they had the chapter headings,
Yeah.
I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
But they would do it without the chapter headings too. Like they called the first part Witch Balls.
Yeah.
And I suppose I didn't mention they have a weird interlude, which I believe is in the comic as well.
Yeah,
It's like one page.
That was straight from the comic.
Yeah.
I think the dialogue's a little bit different,
Mhm.
but that was very much a thing of,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that I can see why maybe they felt like the general audience wouldn't be as behind this, because there are things that I think will be weird to a general audience that didn't read the comic.
And the thing is, I don't think it would have been weird if they just did it again. Because they have these chapter headings, and if they did it for like all of these like mystical bits, like if they then did it for the lucky bone, and then maybe did it for like the soul coins or something, and had this like weird witch character doing things, I think that it would have been like actually a really fun motif that would have given the movie a really fun, distinct identity.
To answer your question, I was not a big fan of the way they did the cuts. It felt like there was no artistry to it. There was no creativity behind it. It just felt like we want the one scene, we're going to the next scene, and we're cutting. And like you said, sometimes they would just slap black in the middle there, which was even more confusing. Maybe because they started realizing that their straight cuts were not very pleasing, so they were like, maybe if we stick a little bit of black between them, it'll be better.
But it was just so empty, you know?
It was a little bit better, because I don't know why the straight cuts they did were like, I think it's one of those things you don't notice when you're watching a lot of films until like you watch a film that doesn't do it nicely. Like the cuts just did not flow well into each other. It was just like, oh, we're in a new scene now. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. It comes across as
the edit was weird.
Yeah.
But that being said, Jay touched on it. So in the comic, Cora is kind of taken over by these ancient witches trapped in the coal mines, and she explodes into bugs. Like she's vomiting up bugs. They're coming from everywhere. It's one of the like raddest, most distinct moments in the entire comic. And then Hellboy gets flooded by these witches and bugs.
Yep.
And we get like a weird little kind of dream sequencey thing.
Also, dream sequence completely different in the film. Because they added in a theme with his mother,
mom.
Yeah.
We'll jump to that in a second. But instead of having the bugs, instead they have kind of just out of nowhere Cora disappear, and then Hellboy is the one who finds her, as Tom and Bobbie are also looking for her. And so I got the impression that the snake came out of her vagina.
Yeah, that is what happened.
Yeah. Like it came
I was kind
out
of like
from
dancing
under
around
her
it
dress.
earlier. I didn't. It was weird.
Yeah,
and
snake
comes out, goes back in, goes in her mouth. It just kept teleporting to different places. It felt like they cut like 3.
And like I think that
together.
the Ouroboros-y of it could have worked, but didn't quite.
No,
like I don't know what they really could have done to make it work better, but
this was somewhere where they needed some budget. That snake did not look good.
No, especially in the action, because Hellboy starts trying to wrestle the snake, and it is one made of rubber. Like not literally, it's like CGI made of rubber.
Yeah.
And 2, like it's so bad looking.
Yeah, it does not look good at all. Like that spider really took too much of the budget, man. Like it was a great sequence, but it's your opener. Like
the thing is, if they had just let the darkness come earlier, it would have been better. Is my hot take. Like in the
it was because like a lot of it was the way the light was reflecting off of it. Like it made it look so, like you said, rubbery. So,
and the fact that it was in broad daylight.
Oh yeah, and they would they were trying to render like reflections and stuff on it, which made it look awful.
It looked so bad, and like the way that it was behaving was also super weird. And
they were only like animating, I think, like the head and like the tail, and the middle was staying like almost completely straight.
Well, it wasn't staying still; it was moving on the same pattern on her, as almost a little fake.
I meant when Hellboy was fighting it. Because it felt like it was very straight when Hellboy was fighting it, just the two ends turning. And that was real weird for like a fight sequence.
It was real weird. Do you want to remind us?
And then when like it bites his neck, it's like sticking straight out. Like what is that? Like how is it?
The snake was T-posing with no arms.
The snake was real bad.
The snake was real bad, and it's such a bummer because it was replacing such a good, amazing scene in the comic. I don't quite remember what Hellboy's dream sequence was in the comic. Do you remember?
He comes across...
Is it a flashback?
Somebody, it's some sort of body. I think it's Core's body again or something like that. Comes across somebody's body that's now like I think a skeleton, and then it erupts with bugs too, like similar to how Core's did.
And then
I think there was some sort of dialogue or important thing in there, but I remember the visual more than I remember whatever the like story beat was that was in there.
And there was a really good like claustrophobic moment. So good to have Hellboy just swarmed. So lame to have him bitten by a snake.
And then have him hallucinate his mommy and be like,
right?
I didn't know her, but she was a witch, and that affects me somehow. Like, it's so much worse that they put so much time into like this mother plot line, and it's not a I never met my mother plot line. It's a my mother was a witch plot line, but in there they just throw in I never met my mother. So it's just like, so why does any of that matter? Yeah. It was real weird.
It's the whole mother plotline is super fucking weird, and I disliked it greatly.
Yeah.
I think it was a bad addition, and very much made so that they wouldn't have to like, I don't know, accept that it could be random chance that Hellboy happens across a supernatural occurrence.
It was their way of trying to connect him to the Crooked Man, so the Crooked Man could be like, I'll free your mother's soul. And it's like...
But he also, like, didn't really. Like, at one point he says that Hellboy missed his chance to free his mother's soul. But I don't remember there being, like, a deal in there somewhere.
I think he offered him the first time they meet.
Oh, like, in the church?
He goes, like, it's like if you bash Tom's head in and give him something like that. If you, like, kill Tom, I'll bring your mother back. It was something like that.
But also, we don't have any emotional connection to Hellboy's mother, and we don't have any reason to think that Hellboy would have an emotional connection to her.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's why it doesn't work at all. Because they like set it up and then throw in the he never knew his mom, which, based on the way they set things up, makes none of it matter anymore.
Exactly.
Like, it wasn't done in a Hellboy has never gotten the chance to meet his mother and wants to sense. No, it was done in a his mother is a witch who went to hell and he should feel bad about that sense. But by the way, he never met his mother, so he's not actually going to feel bad.
Yeah.
So it weird.
Very weird sequence. Also importantly, in the comic, when they come out of this, Tom has used the lucky bone to save them. Or he like thinks that he has. And that's like a really interesting point of contention for Tom, where he's like, oh shit, did I just like did I sell my soul away?
Yeah.
But like he needed to save Hellboy and he needed to get them out of there so he could bring his father to consecrated ground. And they don't touch on that at all.
They do. I don't know if you missed that. So the thing is, he doesn't use it in the fight or anything like that. But then after the fight, he goes, I used the bone. If I wasn't a witch before, I'm definitely a witch now.
How did I just fully miss that?
Yeah, he says it. Like, he says the line from the comic, but the moment from the comic that leads to that line is not there. It was so weird. That's why I was like, why the fuck are you saying this? It makes no sense.
Wild.
Because you remember they set it up. I'm sure you remember the bit where they set up where he asks Hellboy if he's a witch because of the thing. So then, after that scene, like, as they're walking, he has his, like, father's body on his shoulder, and he says to Hellboy, he's like, I used the lucky bone. If I wasn't a witch before, I sure as hell am now, or something along those lines.
I'm sure that at that point I was writing an angry note in my notes app about how they ruined the
It was in like the transition of the church when they were moving toward the church.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
In any case, it doesn't make sense to have it there.
It made no sense. I was lost. Yeah. I was literally going to ask you. I was going to ask you if I had missed a moment where he did use the lucky bone in the fight, because I don't think he was in the fight. Like, I don't. He
wasn't. They were separated.
Thing. That makes me think there had to be reshoots, though. Like, that they left that line in. Like, there had to have been something that was supposed to lead
he
to
did.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if they changed it because Bobbie's the one who, like, comes over and finds Hellboy.
I could also see it being a thing where they had done the original... They had filmed it to be the original sequence, and then... And maybe filmed this as a backup or something, and realized we do not have the budget to animate the explosion and the things, and went, okay, let's go to plan B, which is what we got. Full speculation.
Yeah. But a bummer that we didn't get the full bug apocalypse. But in any case, they make it to the church, and those of you familiar with the comics know that, this is like Act 3 time.
Yeah,
because we made it to the church, but it's not because it's only 45 minutes into the 90-minute movie. But they make it to the church. They meet the Reverend. The witches start to knock on the door, which is super rad. I really liked the scene with the knocking on the door. I thought that was neat.
I liked a lot of the church scene, honestly.
Yeah, I liked the way that the Crooked Man was. I think that he. And
I think
really
it was a good decision. Like, you have to pad runtime. I think the best way they did it was expanding the like thrown corpses to like a full zombie attack sequence. I was like, that makes perfect sense. That's a perfect switching of mediums, extra time for your third act. Like, that was one of the changes where I looked at it and went, this makes so much sense to me. And this is the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, they have the like, I think Tom goes out and then Hellboy goes out, which is the same as in the comic, I believe, where they interact with the Crooked Man, and we can see that he like can't enter the consecrated ground.
Yeah.
We also do see, which I thought was a really nice holdover from the comic, we see Cora sitting there because the Reverend says that like the girl told it. And I like that. I think that they kind of turn it on its head a little bit later in a way that bums me out. Because when we talked about the comic, I was really jazzed about the fact that like Cora's soul was saved. I thought that was a really cool angle to take. And later on, they kind of re-damn her. And I'm like, okay, let Cora be. But then, like you said, they do an amazing sequence with all of the
and they still do all the stuff with the Reverend, like the appeal to the Reverend, de-aging him, all that's still in there from the comic.
And the church sequence, I think, was really well done. I enjoyed it a lot.
And I honestly think it still could have worked as the third. Obviously, they would have needed to fill out more runtime, but I think it would have worked really well as the third act if they had set up to get there and done it the way that they did it. And so many moments there, like the aging thing. The grabbing wishbone with the same thing of like their hands together, doing it on the shovel, like all.
Yeah, they use the like Holy Spirit to mark the shovel so that Hellboy can go and.
And my favorite line from the comic makes it, which is like the I can't remember the exact wording, but it's like where the Reverend is like, I do not wish to see like what's going on. God, please take my my eyes back.
I was bummed because one of my favorite lines from the comic didn't make it, which is when Tom wants to take the shovel and take out the Crooked Man. And he's like, he gives it to Hellboy. He's like, your demons are like the worst of your demons are behind you. Yeah.
I think they took that because it wasn't the final blow anymore.
Exactly. You know? It wouldn't have made sense at the minute 50 mark of the 90-minute movie, but
I think we're a little longer. Like the church scene goes on, so like I think the church scene goes a little past the hour mark, and then we have like 25 minutes post.
That sounds right.
Something like that.
But yeah, super wonderful church scene. I love the way that they did the Crooked Man do like massaging the dirt to erupt the sinners. I thought that the way that they did all of the sinners was also really, really cool.
Yeah. This was another place where the budget definitely went on all those like and all that. And again, this was really great. Like if this had been the end, I would have been like, this like we had a great beginning set piece, we had a great end. Obviously, this doesn't end up being the end, but this would have been a great end set piece. And then
it really would have been
filling stuff out.
But that's fine because the everything happens there. Hellboy strikes the Crooked Man. We see him get away as a raven, and all of the witches. Do they dissolve? They dissolve in the comic, don't they?
I don't think they dissolve here.
I don't think they dissolve. But they are all gone.
Yeah, they're all gone. Yeah. I don't think we see them dissolve or anything like that, though. If I'm not... Yeah, they didn't have the budget for that.
But in any case, they're like, oh shit, the Crooked Man has gotten away. We need to go like fuck with him at his mansion, which is this like kind of place of myth in the Appalachian Mountains where he did his original thing as the Crooked Man, like playing both sides on the Civil War.
Yeah.
And this is where we have Bobbie and Hellboy split up. Bobbie is left at the church with the Reverend, and Hellboy goes with Tom to go find the mansion. And this is where we get like full whole cloth. And I think it showed, Like it was Hellboy and Tom start going through the mansion. There are like a number of kind of like psychological traps. Uh,
Yeah.
I did like the end of one of Hellboy's traps where or do we want to run through the other two first? Because
No, you can.
okay,
I don't
yeah,
think it's. Do whatever you feel
they're
like. I
doing
don't think
kind
that's
of
necessary.
unimportant things in my
Yeah.
opinion. We
Yeah.
get some weird backstory on Bobbie about like losing her grandfather or something. Like Jay said, she dabbles more in witchcraft. This is after she had asked Cora about it before, and we see her like kind of trying to do spells.
Yeah.
Uh,
She decides that if she like can do a spell in the mines, she'll like cut off the
yeah,
crooked man's power.
and she has an awful scene with the Reverend there. Like when she's like, explain to me why the church would be built on top of a coal mine. And it was that bothered me so much. I'm just like, you don't need to justify these things. Like,
Yeah. No,
we can just
and it
accept
was
that they
like,
exist.
we're gonna block the hell from coming
Yeah.
up or whatever. Like, okay.
It was like, I feel like it was kind of when she wasn't near Hellboy and a little bit when she was, I feel like Bobbie sometimes slipped into like the worst of like Whedonisms. Like she very much felt like a 90s Buffy character instead of a rated R Hellboy movie.
That's why I said like that opening sequence was, and then I think the early town stuff too was like the only time that it really felt like she was well utilized. Like the rest of the time was them like trying to give these quicker sides to set up for this end bit with her and the Reverend, which was not worth setting up.
And like she had my least favorite trope happen, which is where a useless character is left behind and they want to do something helpful, but they end up like just fucking themselves. It bothers me so much where it's like, you didn't have to do this. And I feel like there was a very easy fix for this if they just gave Bobbie a reason to think that the spider was down there in the mines.
I would have liked to have like, and again, I hate to keep saying budget things, but I'm that's the assumption I'm gonna keep making. If we had like seen her try, like we saw her, but if we'd seen like her try and use witchcraft throughout in like a cool visual way, would have been better set up. But it's just her talking about witchcraft a lot, which is
and like
super lame.
And in a way that made me be like, okay, what is like? 'Cause clearly, it doesn't seem like she is getting her power from the same place that the witches are, because the witches all like had to sell their soul to do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, clearly she's like learning something else, like non-witchcraft.
They didn't even try to do like fake magic. Like it was just general like witch. But if I cast a spell down, no specific spell. No, if I do that, like, you know, like yes, sometimes it sounds stupid when you have people doing just like fake science, like fake magic, but at least it follows something. If they're like, if I cast this incantation with this, but I need mana from this, like, at least it makes us think there's some sort of rules or rhyme or something. This was literally just spells, witchcraft. And it was, if I do a spell, I can stop his power.
Like, what got me is that it was also
like the placement lines before you replace them with the real things later.
And she led into it with something that ended up sounding like terrible magic stuff because they didn't lean into that. She's like, yeah, the mines are like the circulatory system of the forest, which is evil. So if I do something down in the mines, it'll disrupt his power source. And I'm like, the magic ain't magicking.
No,
as someone
but like,
who,
even that, like she's using like a metaphor. There was no actual like trying to explain anything in magic terms. For whatever reason, they were like, we can't do that. We can't try to use magic terms or anything. It's like, why? Why can't you do that? It's a goddamn Hellboy movie.
And she's literally doing magic.
Yeah, like her whole thing is that she's studying witchcraft. I do not believe she studied a goddamn thing of witchcraft. Because then she'd be saying witchy words and stuff all the time. Like, what is going on?
And like, that was a big thing that bothered me with her character too, is like she's supposed to be like this research person, you know? She's supposed to be very knowledgeable. She's new to the BPRD, but she's like there. Like, but instead of being able to like be a font of information and knowledge, instead she just gets used as like this audience stand-in so she can ask questions that the audience can then learn the answers to.
Yeah,
And
she's
she
not
doesn't
even though
even
like
do them
all
like
like
a
there's
natural
plenty
way.
of times where it's still like Tom explaining things to Hellboy too. It's like
Yeah.
only when they can't justify that she like becomes the like secondary audience stand-in. Like it's so because the book was
And it's a
already
bummer
set
'cause
up
I actually-
for Hellboy to be the audience stand-in in the normal comic, so Tom
Yeah.
explained things to him, and they didn't change any of that for the movie. So it's only when there's something that wasn't in the book being explained that then she's the stand-in. Like it's so.
And I think it's a bummer because I actually really liked her actress in most of the movie. I enjoyed her performance more than.
Do you want to get to the castings, because that's what I've been really holding on. I think we should get through the whole. Let's get through the whole plot.
Let's finish it. So she does this whole thing.
Yeah.
She ends up using her heart to cast magic in the place so that she can catch the spider, which guess what is down there for some reason. Because it went into the mines before, so of course it's there now. Back at the mansion of the Crooked Man, Hellboy and Tom are immediately being like waylaid by these supernatural traps. The one that I liked the outcome of, even though I didn't like the movement to the outcome, was a trap where Hellboy was confronted with his mother again, which is why I didn't like it. And she's like begging him to kill her, and somehow this is the trap that I believe gets disrupted by Bobbie casting a spell. But he's broken out of it, and you see that he was like pointing his gun at his mom and instead just pointing at him. I think that's a really fun trap.
That was cool.
Motif. And then I'm not gonna lie, most of the mansion kind of was a blur for me. Like,
it just has a very bad fight with the Crooked Man after that.
Because the Crooked Man doesn't like engage in the fight. He's like using kind of psychic powers, which I don't know. There's not like you can do fun things with psychic powers, sure.
Yeah,
but it's
there's
not,
a weirdly nice like short cinematography moment right at the end when the coins fall out.
Is it where Hellboy's being like tossed around?
No, like when the Crooked Man like falls down the stairs and like
my God.
There's like a nice pan down the coins on the stairs. I'm like, that was nice, and then we go right back to like weird Dutch angle, shaky.
Yeah.
I was like, where'd that artsy come from? Like that's the first artsy shot you've done in this entire film.
Because we're talking about the last fight, I do want to say I really actually liked that they paid special attention to the physicality of Hellboy. I think that they gave him like a little bit of extra oomph, whether he's like on wires or they added it later or whatever they ended up doing. I don't know movies. They gave him a lot of like very supernatural movements where like he's jumping a little too high for a person, or like he's moving in a way that's a little too much for like a regular person. And
I don't want to take credit away from the film, but I don't think that was intentional, because I don't know if I think other characters were doing that too. Like I think I was seeing like the Crooked Man have things like that in the fight, and other characters when they fight like I think they were just very floaty in fights. I think everybody was on cables during fights for whatever reason, so they could be like thrown better, but like even just people like moving felt very like airy to me. Like people were constantly like
I noticed it very specifically with Hellboy, and it was very consistent with him throughout. So it could just be that he's the only person who got to like have a number of fights going on.
Yeah.
Because Tom's not really involved in the Crooked Man fight, really. Like it's mostly just Hellboy being thrown through walls.
Yeah.
And then Hellboy does throw an elderly man down the stairs. Like, granted, he is an emissary of the devil, but it's still rough. I said I wasn't going to say it on camera, but it made me laugh. As he went down the stairs, he was, like, hitting the stairs and taking damage and dropping coins like he's fucking Mario. It was so fucking funny. Like, it was a fine moment. It was a lame way to end your fight with your big bad, and also, like, a little goofy in and of itself. How did you feel about the mansion?
Didn't love it overall. Like the church was a better ending. Like,
right?
Full stop. Yeah, I mean, I think I said my piece about it throughout there.
That's fair.
I don't want to keep dunking.
I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't.
I mean, it was the Hellboy Crooked Man fight was one of the worst offenders of how bad the cinematography was, especially during action sequences. Like, I could not tell what the fuck was going on 90% of the time. Like, so much shaky cam, so many cuts. Like, it was just impossible to follow.
There was one really good moment in the fight, though, that maybe I just liked because I'm a goon, where I think the Crooked Man has him in like he's like holding him up telepathically, and we get like a really fun silhouette where we can see like Hellboy's tail and like his hand. I'm like that's Hellboy right there. But it was very much just
Did the ponytail weird you out? I don't know why.
Okay, well, real quick, so they defeat the Crooked Man. They find Effie, and they do a very much worse version of the bridal scene.
Oh yeah, cut away.
Oh my god, it was so lame.
I'm gonna say how bad it is right here. Okay. Because I reread today a summary of the film just to like try to remember it before we went into the video because I watched it last night. In the summary, it like describes the Effie scene, whatever, moves on, and then says, and then at the end we see a horse with "Beware, I'm a witch" on it. Like the person writing the summary did not connect that it was the same like
oh my gosh
thing. And I was like, like I get that it's kind of there because of the scene that was over an hour ago of the dad having the bridal, but like I get it. You don't see him putting it on her really. Like you don't get the transformation. Like I get how somebody who hadn't read the comic doesn't necessarily make the connection that that's her.
I also very much disliked, instead of having Tom say the line, well, it's not the most Christian thing to do, they instead have him, as he's pulling it out, say, I knew I held onto this bridle for a reason. And I'm like, that's like the worst line in the entire movie, in my hot take.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's yeah. Anyway, though, we've reached the end of the film.
Yes, Bobbie and Hellboy find a phone, and they fly off in a helicopter together, where she lays her head on his shoulder, because apparently they're in love, and they fly over the iconic Effie as a horse painted "Beware, I'm a witch" on the side.
Yeah.
And then they cut to credits. Yep. So Jay, do you want to take us in a direction?
I want to talk about the casting.
Yes.
Because I think, despite the changes, I think this is still a good adaptation. Like, I think it adapts the comic well.
Yeah.
I think beyond the poor cinematography and low budget, what hurts this film the most is I think most of the acting's pretty bad.
Yes. That's when I was saying that I liked Bobbie, it's that I was like, I liked her better than most of them, but she's still
I mean, like I thought Effie was actually good. Like one of the few that to me went like good. Like some of her lines were rough, but I thought she was pretty good. The rough thing is I think both Hellboy and Tom are awful. And that's like the really bad thing. They're the two main characters, and I thought they were both just awful. Like they were delivering all their lines in such weird ways. Like the emotion was hard to read half the time, and the other times it was cranked up to 12 for no good reason. Like it was real
and
rough.
I think that's one of the reasons that Effie was able to get away with seeming like one of the better actors is because she was supposed to be cranked up to 11. Yeah. And like so she got to overact. Everybody was overacting. I just, except for Hellboy, and Tom, who were like underacting the entire time. And it was, except for when he talked about his mom, and then suddenly he was like,
Tom had moments where he was overacting, man. Like Tom was weird sometimes, man. Like honestly, anytime he was talking about like thinking he was a witch, like he went, and I was like, what are you on? Like somebody just like pumped you full of some shit, man. Like
because it was so inconsistent. Like nothing between the actors felt natural. Like I don't think anyone really had chemistry with each other.
Honestly, the opening exchange between Hellboy and Bobbie was like that's why I was so hyped. I was like, ooh, I like this. I like Hellboy's vibe here with her. I like the way that's going. Because he was very like cool, solitary, like wandering. Like he had that like wandering hero feel to him in that opening sequence. And then he just kind of felt like a guy who was red. And I was like,
oh my god!
What the fuck was the ponytail? It looked so weird. I don't know.
I think we actually talked about. I don't remember if it was on camera or off camera when we were talking about the Crooked Man comic, and I was telling you how much I hate, but also cannot look away from Hellboy's receding hairline, because like it works from a Mignola-esque character design perspective.
Yeah,
because like you see it sometimes. But most of the time, you don't have to worry about it. the way that they did the synthetic hair was so bad because they had it on his little ponytail. They had his rough hairline be like rimrod straight across the back of his head.
But he also had like
and
a full, like, I think Hellboy traditionally has like more of like a bun. Like he has like a little bit of hair there. Like this he had like a long kind of ponytail thing.
And the thing is, it was
weird.
long and it was such a weird shape. And the same thing happened with his little goatee.
Like I feel like Hellboy usually looks like scruffy, you know? Like,
yeah.
This was greasy. This was greasy Hellboy.
It's so this is a weird tangent to take, but as a child who did a lot of cosplaying, I saw a lot of really bad wigs, and this was just, I don't know if they must have blown all of the budget on his horns, because I think that otherwise he looked good. It was the hair that got me. I really liked what they did with costuming with him. I think that his big coat was very well shaped for a Hellboy adaptation. Yeah,
actually, I'm trying to remember now though. Did we ever see his tail, or was the vibe just that it was hidden?
No, we saw his tail.
Okay, we saw his tail. Okay, yeah. I couldn't remember now.
I don't know why. Which I know because every time I saw it, I was like, I need to ask Jay if he thinks Hellboy has a prehensile tail or not. And do you?
What? I'm sorry. I did
prehensile tail, like one that he can move on its own accord.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
I like to think so. I don't know. I'm trying to remember through all of the Hellboy comics we've read.
I don't think he ever has, but
I don't think he ever has used it.
I want Hellboy to shoot somebody with his tail now.
Yes. Yes. But yeah, so overall, how did you feel about the movie? I'm going to say first, how did you feel about it as a movie, then how did you feel about it as an adaptation?
Yeah, I think I've said many times that a movie can be a bad adaptation, but a good film. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I've said the opposite often, but I think that's what this is. Where this is a pretty good adaptation. I don't think this is a good film. Especially, I think as a Hellboy fan, you can kind of appreciate it because you'll get like I've said this about other things where like, I don't understand how a non-comic fan's going to enjoy it because like, I think most of my enjoyment was going, hey, that was the thing from the comic! Hey, they did that! Seeing that in live action was cool! Like, I think if you're a general audience member, which is probably why this didn't go to cinemas, like, if you're saying there's a general audience member, I don't know that you're going to get a ton out of this except going and being like, why are they acting like that? Like, what's going on? And then there are moments that I think without the comic feel real weird because they lost kind of some of the connective tissue or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't think it was great. I think there were some great moments. I think there were some great sequences and great scenes.
Yeah.
But poor acting and poor cinematography and poor special effects for some of it, not a good combination, man. Like, that takes away from... Because weirdly, despite some of the weird additions, I think the writing was the best thing about this film for the most part. Like, that's why...
For the most part.
Yeah. There's some... But I think that was the thing that I think had the highest high, because it's not like the acting really had some highs, or it's not like the... I mean, I guess some of the special effects had highs, but overall, yeah, I think like the writing was the thing that was... Like, I think there's a version of the film that's written the way this film was written that could still be good if you had like good actors and good effects in there.
I think there's a version of this film that is really good and that I want to see if you just like let it be an hour.
Yeah.
Like, I think you'd have to move some stuff around. I think that once...
I mean, you need some better acting. Like, I mean, I think you can get away with the poor Hellboy acting, honestly. Like, weirdly, I think you can get away with that. Tom needed a better casting. Like, that was the Reverend probably could have been a bit better, too. He was really up acting.
I was going to say,
like,
he was very much
the actor's fault if it was, like, the direction. They, like, wanted everybody turned up to 11.
He also, like, to touch on the Reverend real quick, because it was one of my... I feel like he had the biggest character assassination. Because he was really good through the church scene, and then they had him keep going, and he kept making weird jokes. Like, he's like, I'm gonna need a new shovel. And at one point, he said something was as dark as the devil's asshole. And I'm like, sir, what?
Yeah, maybe they're saying the writing was strong. The writing was strong when they were just pulling Mignola's shit one for one.
Yes, that's why I was like, I don't know why I agree about the writing, man.
No, that's fair. But I guess like my thing was, I think the story, like I think like if you take like the plot, I think was strong enough to carry a good film.
Oh, really? The plot, which they definitely wrote themselves.
No, but even with the changes, like even with Bobbie along for the ride, and even with like the opening train was a good addition plot wise.
Yeah.
That was a good way to bring in. I think for an audience that isn't going to have like, I'm just waiting, the Hellboy stories where he's wandering. Like I think that was a good intro in.
Agreed.
I mean, the chain sequence start to finish, which is a great way to open up the this story for a movie audience, but
for sure.
Also, I don't know if you noticed,
I enjoyed it, though.
I think it shows the lack of faith they had in this film. They've been marketing it as the 4th installment of the Hellboy franchise, despite the fact that, this is the second reboot within those 4 films.
But overall, honestly, I'd watch it again. I had fun. It's October.
No, you gotta give the answer that I gave. Good movie, good adaptation, bad adaptation. You need your two.
I'm boringly following in your footsteps there. I think it was a bad movie, a good adaptation, but also like I don't need my movies to be good. I am very happy to be like that nerd on the couch to be like, yeah, I'm gonna watch The Crooked Man because I like the Crooked Man.
This is the kind of thing where I'll like look up my favorite scenes on YouTube and rewatch them instead of. It's what I do with the Green Lantern film, where it's like I don't think I can watch it all the way through, but I'll watch that training scene like every couple months because damn, that's cool. Like it's the thing where like I'll watch the train scene or I'll watch the church scene, but I think I think watching this whole film gives me. Funny enough, I did cancel our recording last night because of how bad a headache I had after watching this film. I don't think that was because of the cinematography, but I was about to say cinematography gives me a headache, and I realized that was literally true yesterday.
Yes.
Which might have made it worse. Like the cuts might have been even worse because I had a headache and it just compounded. But in any case,
yes, The Crooked Man. We watched it and had thoughts. Again, if you want to see our review of the comic, it's also like a good explainer for what goes on in the comic. We'll have that linked.
Let us know
phenomenal
what you thought of the film,
book.
by the way.
Sorry, what?
I was telling people to let us know what they thought of the film. You know, in the comments on social. We should do another poll. We did a Tim Drake poll this week. That you guys
you cowards won't let DC kill him.
No, it was tied for the longest time, and then fucking Tim Living won. So
it's too bad because that poll was going to affect DC editorial. But in any case, we have so much more content for you guys here on the Script Heroes channel. We have our regular weekly episodes going up on Wednesdays. There's one from last week where we jumped in on Batman and Robin with DC's All In. We had a new Mad Cave book and kept up with Minor Arcana from Jeff Lemire. We have another episode coming out next week, which has other comics in it that I'm sure are good.
It has the Pedestrian number 3.
Hell yeah,
that was the first one I thought of. But yeah, we got more Pedestrian.
It's the best one. I don't remember what else we have, but God, I love the Pedestrian. We also had a bonus episode last weekend, which was our Strange Saturday Super Show. We talked about... Yeah, that was last weekend, right?
Yeah. That was last
we talked about Grant Morrison's Sea Guy.
Katie was not believing me there. She was like, I could see
I was like, that was definitely 2 weeks ago, you fool. But no, I'm the fool. And next weekend we have a bonus episode. It's going to be one of our tier lists. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's going to be our Halloween tier list.
We're going to go through a bunch of the Halloween specials that DC and Marvel and others have put out. I don't know about others, actually. I don't know if there have been many other Halloween specials.
I'm sure there have been. I don't know if we're going to engage with any of them.
We'll
be have some horror-themed news that came out today, so that'll be on the episode. Yeah,
I have seen none of it.
Thematic.
So
it's very thematic.
Exciting.
I guess that's not on the bonus episode. That's in the main episode, though. But Halloween theme all week. We're going to have a horror news for the main episode.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and we'll have that Halloween tier list. So
absolutely.
Join us for spooky season.
See you next week.
Comic Geeks.